more people coming in, so maybe. I don't know, he looks a little zoned out, but. Okay, thumbs up.
Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Church of Los Alamos. I am the Reverend John Cullinan, your minister here. As Unitarian Universalists, we affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of all people and gather together in a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. Whoever you are, whomever you love, wherever you are at this moment, here or watching from home, wherever you are on your life's journey, you are welcome to be a part of this community. I want to extend a special welcome to any visitors or first-time guests we have among us today. I invite you to join us all after the service for some coffee and conversation in our fellowship hall off to the right here. Have some coffee, and I would love to introduce myself and answer any questions you might have about our community here. New parents are invited to have a chat with the Reverend Tina DeYoe, our Director of Lifespan Religious Education. She can tell you all about our educational options for children and adults. Children are welcome in for the entirety of the service. We've got our young worshiper space up here on the carpet at the front and our intention table right behind that, or you can stay sitting with your parents. And for our youngest folks, we have our nursery care, and Sarah here, our nursery coordinator, will be happy to help you out with that if you need that. And I'll take a moment, please, to get centered and prepare for worship this morning. Take a moment and feel yourself grounded where you sit. Think of all the things you need to leave at the door this morning. Take a deep breath in and out. And let us begin. Thresholds. We cross them every day, from room to room, from outside to inside and back again, from here to there, from anywhere to everywhere, from age to age. Each threshold offers an opportunity for change, for renewal, for transformation, from what we were and what we are to what can be. In this hour and in this place, we cross a threshold from our day-to-day everydayness into space and time attuned to the other, to the sacred, to the holy, into an awareness of new life, pregnant with possibilities. How will we be renewed in this moment? How will we be changed by this hour? How will we be transformed through this gathering of beloved community? Come, you longing, thirsty souls, and let us worship together on this beautiful morning. Would you all please rise in body or spirit and join in our opening hymn, number 209. Please remain standing and join in our affirmation. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve life in fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow in harmony. Thus do we covenant with each and with all. Please be seated. A candle has been lit this morning for respect for all people all over the world. And we also light a candle today in honor of Marge Wolfe, a longtime member of this congregation, nearly 50 years. Marge passed away early on Friday morning after a brief stay in hospice in her place at Aspen Ridge. We will hold a memorial service celebrating Marge's life sometime this summer, and we will keep you informed about that. But as is our tradition, I light our candle of life in honor of Marge Wolfe. And I ask now that we join in a moment of silence. Eternal and beloved, gracious source of all life and all love, we come together this morning grateful for this time out of time, which we have set apart so that we might become more fully present to our own selves, to each other, to our communities, and to that which we call holy. May our joys be celebrated together, our wounds be healed together, our hearts be opened together. We gather this morning in order to imagine not one path, but many. We imagine a path forward for those who cannot imagine any path forward because of poor health, financial hardship, family crises, and other roadblocks we cannot begin to understand or imagine. We struggle to imagine a path forward for those who are forced to leave a homeland against their will, and for those unable to leave a war-torn homeland despite their lives being in danger. We imagine a path forward for those who leave their homes to make a better life for their families elsewhere. May we be a welcoming presence along that path toward hope. We come together to imagine a path forward for those of us despairing because we do not seem to know our country nor our neighbors, despite the fact that we have not moved at all. May we be the good we are hoping to find as we travel side by side down the path toward hope. We imagine a path forward for those who feel lonely. May we take one another's hands as we walk that path toward community. Truly, we know as we imagine these ways forward and take one another's hands, the paths will lead to hope. the roads will lead to beloved community, and the arc will bend toward justice, because we have dared to travel with love in our hearts. All this we pray in the names of those known and unknown, present and absent, remembered and forgotten, in the names of all the helpers of humankind. Amen. Oh, shoot, I thought you were doing it. Wires crossed. If the young and the young at heart would like to join me for a story this morning, please come on down. Our youngest of heart here, my goodness. It's a short story this morning, and it's about the emergence of a butterfly. A young boy was out on a nature hike one day when he came across the chrysalis of a butterfly. He saw that it was just beginning to open. And so enamored was he by the sight that he took the branch with him and brought it home to continue watching the emergence. But it was taking a lot of time. Hours had passed, and still the opening in the chrysalis had not progressed too far, and to the boy's mind, it looked like the butterfly that was trying to emerge was struggling too hard to emerge. And the boy felt pity and didn't want to see the creature struggling, and so he took a little pair of scissors and he widened that opening in the chrysalis for the butterfly so it would have an easier time coming forth. But what he found was not a butterfly resplendent in its colors and its wings. What emerged from the chrysalis was a weak insect. Its wings had not completely formed. It was slow and sluggish and could not fly. Because you see, the thing is, the struggle of the butterfly to emerge from the chrysalis is part of the process of becoming that butterfly. The struggle and the twists move the fluid in the butterfly's body so that the wings may fill and come to their fullness. The struggle is an important part of the process. And sometimes, for butterflies and for us, there are no shortcuts to transformation. That's our story this morning. Tina's got some coloring activities, little foldable butterflies. So you may head back to that or back to seats with your parents or stay right here on the rug. I just want to be clear on the context here. I meant to write it that way. This is not the proverbial slow news week, slow news month. Just a few reports to kick us off today about things that are happening in the world of slow time. On February 4th of this year in Halberstadt, Germany, there was a huge pomp and circumstance as the chord was changed on this special organ in what is scheduled to be the longest performance of composer John Cage's piece, As Slowly as Possible. Cage himself played the premiere in just under 30 minutes. In 2009, a pianist made it last just about 15 hours without a break. But in Halberstadt, Germany, the home of the John Cage Organ Society, they decided that this performance will last 639 years. The amount of time between the building of the church it is housed in and the start of the new millennium when they began the performance in 2001. Meanwhile, it was announced that at last there was a completion date scheduled for the Sagrada Familia sometime in 2026. The Great Basilica will be finished mostly after it was started its construction in 1886, I want to say, because I didn't write that note down. I don't remember which one of my mentors it was early on in my career as I was gathering some coaching. It might have even been something I read. I don't remember where I came from it, but it was so true that it's occupied my mind for the decade or so since I heard it. Church time is slow time. Now, I don't think they meant a 639-year organ performance when they said that, or 126 years of constructing a new cathedral. Can you all imagine if our building project had taken 126 years? Would any of us still be here to participate in that? I don't know. Church time is slow time, says my mentor. And that's true of many things where people are gathered, being all peoply. Building beloved community is slow time. Transforming the world into what we think it could be is slow time. Because all of these moments of transformation, these projects of change, involve large bodies of human beings being human beings. And this can be frustrating for people who hold leadership positions in these communities and for anybody in these communities who feels passionately, wholeheartedly behind the mission and the vision of these organizations. Slow time can be exhausting and disheartening. There's so much going on right now, friends. There's so much that needs addressing right now. We got to get there. We got to do it. This has been my struggle for a good part of my ministry. Having a vision, knowing what I wanted us to do, and just trying to get there, just trying to push it. I can see what it is. And again, one of my early mentors said to me as I carped about this struggle of, they're just not going there yet. John, I know that you know where you're going, but you can't just point to the destination and say, get there. You got to bring everybody along with you. You can't just point. Unitarian Universalist churches in general across the country, heck, institutions of any kind of social change or import in this country are going through some moments of deep crisis right now. And these crises have been coming for a long time. The pandemic just kind of sped up the timeline a little bit. And we see the symptoms of the crisis come up, especially in churches, and we see it in this church, but not just this church. It looks like a decline in membership or a decline in attendance or a decline in giving, and all of those are frightening and immediate, and sure, we need to address them, but there's deeper systemic issues going on in our institutions that lead to those symptoms, especially with the church monolithic. There is a decline in trust in church for good reason, sadly, because so many churches don't seem to be practicing what they preach. And for some institutions, there's a lack of a sense of who are we to the communities we're serving? What is it that we can offer? And I've asked this question here before. What do we offer that somebody can't get for less time and money at a Starbucks or a book club or a meeting of the Elks Lodge? Who are we? And people are seeing the disconnect between a church's words and its actions, the practicing what they preach. So there's a decline in membership and fewer people saying that church is even important to them. Or the practice of democracy doesn't seem to matter anymore. And that leads us to some big questions that are a little daunting and a little fearsome for us to want to address. How do we reach the people who don't trust institutions? How do we continue to invite them to become a part of the community we are trying to build? What is that spark at the heart of who we are that people cannot get somewhere else? What are we even doing here? Who are we and what are we doing? I love the phrase, the fierce urgency of now. The idea that there is so much to be done, so many challenges to meet that are impacting us right now, and we must meet them constantly. There are symptoms of our systemic breakdowns that need to be addressed right now. We need to be able to meet them. And we like to tackle the symptoms because they appear more like solvable problems. A decline in attendance, a decline in giving, well, that's numbers. That's math, folks. If we can just find the right equation, we can meet that challenge. We can fix everything. We have done something about the fierce urgency of now and the problems that face us right now. But humans being human, sometimes we can mistake fixing the symptoms for fixing the system. The big questions are still waiting for us as much as we might not want to engage with them. They're too big to be done in any kind of quick matter. They involve a lot of conversation with a lot of people. But if we don't start to struggle with the answers to those questions, if we don't meet the deeper system things, more symptoms just arise again, and we just end up in the permanent crisis mode, trying to meet the challenge that is in front of us right now. Act with the urgency of tomorrow and also with the patience of 1,000 years. This is an old saying that is especially popular among community organizers of this day because it speaks to the paradox of what it is that we're trying to do. Deanna Ayers, a black woman activist and organizer, points out that the patience part is essential to the work that we do in building communities. Because patience, she says, is the respect for the capacity of ourselves and others in our communities to do the hard work that we need to do. Patience recognizes that not all of us are sitting in the same situation where we have hours and hours to give of our time or dollars and dollars to give of our fortune. Not everybody can sit down for 5-hour meetings week after week as we hash out the problems we're trying to solve. Sometimes people have to rest. Forgetting about patience, she says, can turn away people that we should be working with and for. Forgetting patience excludes people who don't necessarily have the capacity and resources that some of us might have to do the work that is meeting us. Ayers then pivots to the idea of moving at the speed of trust in terms of how we get to that patient place. Moving at the speed of trust was originally a phrase from Stephen Covey, the great organizational management leader with the multiple PBS specials throughout most of my lifetime. And it's a phrase that's been picked up by community organizer Adrienne Marie Brown, and she talks about it in her book, Emergent Strategy. Moving at the speed of trust means we are emphasizing the importance of our relationships with those in our community who are involved in the work with us or who we are trying to serve. The importance of our relationships with the community in deciding what pace we can work at together. And that's why church time is slow time. It's humans being human, and if we're talking about trust in a community, that is very often a huge ask. Trust does not come easily to many of us. But in order to do the work, so say some, we need to begin with that trust that is so hard to ask for. Frances Fry and Ann Morris, a Harvard professor in the business school and a founder of the Leadership Consortium, talk about the importance of beginning with trust, especially in the consulting work that they do with businesses as they try to change cultures. Because where trust exists, commitment follows. The willingness to be a part of something follows. But, and this is the big question here for Fry and Morris and for us, where does trust come from? How do we get to it? How do we get to a place where we can trust that doesn't take 639 years? Fry and Morris talk about the trust triangle. These are the three things most needed by individuals and by the culture of organizations in order to engender the trust that is necessary to do the work. Empathy, the sense that we are committing to that relationship. I believe that you, individual, organization, care about me and are invested in me. And logic, our analytical chops, our ways of addressing the questions and the problems that we are facing, the sense that we are addressing the right questions in the moment. I know you can do this thing now that I know you care about me, and I trust your judgment. I trust that you are using your reason and going about this in a way that makes sense. And at the apex of that triangle, and perhaps most importantly, authenticity. Our ability to be vulnerable as individuals and institutions, to show our humanity, the depth of who we are, the reality of who we are. I sense that you care about me, and I see that you're making wise decisions, and I see that you are showing me the real you, your authentic self. And all of these point right back to those big systemic questions that seem so daunting that we'd rather avoid. We begin to build trust in how we meet the immediate things facing us with empathy and logic and authenticity, and we strengthen those bonds of trust in how we are wrestling with those big, deep questions with empathy and logic and authenticity. Like the metaphor of our chrysalis earlier. If we're only dealing with the immediate problems, if we're only dealing with the symptoms, it's akin to cutting open that chrysalis a little extra to help ease the transformation, but in the process, stunting transformation because we're just dealing with the immediate. It's the wrestling that helps along the transformation. It is the wrestling with the big questions that makes us ultimately stronger as a church, as a beloved community, as a democratic people. Now, I'm not saying this morning that dealing with the symptoms or dealing with the system, one is better than the other. They go hand in hand. If we're dealing with just the big questions without dealing with the immediacy of problems in front of us, we'll start to engender distrust because it looks like we're disconnected from the world around us, that we would rather live with our head in the clouds, just contemplating the big questions instead of meeting the needs of the immediate. But if we deal with the immediate, if we just deal with the symptoms without wrestling with the bigger questions of who we are and how we serve, we engender distrust because it looks to the outside like we're just operating in permanent crisis mode, that we don't have a sense of ourselves. When we embrace slow time, or better yet, when we embrace the speed of trust, which I'm starting to like more and more as the concept, we demonstrate our ability to balance our reactivity with our adaptability. We demonstrate our ability to move at a sustainable pace. When we embrace the speed of trust, slow time, we're demonstrating, too, that we understand that the big work we are engaged in is a generational project. We are planting in gardens we didn't start right now as ourselves, and we're getting ready to leave something behind for the generations that follow, for work that is hard and takes 639 years, perhaps. Understanding where we exist in that timeline and the work of the deep questions is the way we prevent ourselves from falling into burnout, because we know we don't have to solve the whole puzzle. We just have to do what we can with what we have in service of the bigger thing. And we're laying the groundwork for continued trust in what we built by the generations that follow. It means we're asking questions about how we care for the future. Will my descendants be able to create gardens from seeds we've planted with care and intention and an eye towards the big questions? Should it take 639 years to do? Let's not put a timeline on it, maybe. Let's pay attention to how people are addressing how they build in slow time. For example, the organ that they are using to play as slowly as possible, and this fills me with a lot of anxiety, is being built as the concert is played. Right before the chord change, they were installing the pipes they were going to need in order to have the notes sound. And sometimes they get their math wrong. The piece begins with a moment of silence, and projected over the 639 years as they did their math, they decided that 17 weeks was the appropriate moment. And then they began the first chord after those 17 weeks, and only then realized that they got the math wrong, and it should have been 28 weeks, but oh well, we started the chord, let's keep it going. And during one ceremony where they wanted to change a chord, one of the dignitaries they expected to be there couldn't be there, so they extended the chord for another 2 weeks until he could make it. They're adapting it as they move along, which fills me with a lot of anxiety. If we go back to the ship, the cruise metaphor from a couple of weeks ago, it feels to me like we set out on the cruise, but we feel like we've forgotten something, and it's only a day in when we realize we got to build the boat. The construction of Sagrada Familia has met many roadblocks along its way. It didn't intend to take 126 or whatever years to get to completion. Stuff happens, like the Spanish Civil War, like fires that burn part of the plans, and we got to go back and recreate the path that we had set out for ourselves. It's the flexibility in how we address the big questions while we're dealing with the immediate problems that keeps us together, because we're keeping an eye on the goal, on the vision that we're working towards. It's what we build together that matters most. So we act with the urgency of tomorrow and also the patience of 1,000 years. We build the boat while we're sailing because we're already adrift on the sea, folks. We move at the speed of trust. God, I love that. If we can do that, if we can meet the symptomatic and the systematic all at the same time at a pace that is sustainable and done together, We will do it with a sense of community so strong that no one will need to point the direction, because we will have found the pathway as we go together. May it be so. As we prepare to return to our daily lives, it is time to give something of the gifts of this congregation back to the larger community we are part of. It is time for our offering. During the month of April, all cash and undesignated funds we collect on Sunday mornings will be given to our friends at the Esperanza Women's Shelter in Santa Fe in support of their work. You may give through the basket this morning or through the Givelify app. If you want to do it electronically, you can access that with the QR code there. The offering will now be accepted. May what you give bring you joy and into deeper relationship with this community. It's on.
It's on. Okay. Well, when I first started coming here about 2 years ago, I sort of thought, you know, if I kept up my attendance, maybe I'd get a gold star eventually. Instead, what I get to say is why I belong to this church, why I wanted to belong to this church, why I hope to belong for a very long time, till at least the next eclipse. I believe most of you know kind of my story, that I grew up in the Unitarian church here, the old one. Remember it before it was renovated. And then it was renovated, and then it was repainted, and then it wasn't there anymore because here it is. Well, and then got to high school, fast forwarding. This is fast forward jumps. And left, as everybody does. Left the church, too. I didn't go to any churches, even though, okay, I used to get dragged to other people's churches who were friends. And that was okay because I knew about religions from having been in LRY, which was a lovely thing. But, and then I had a friend commit suicide in my 30s somewhere. Okay, 1987. And I needed to go back and find a church in Santa Fe at that time. It was a good time to join the Unitarian Church in Santa Fe. It's had its ups and downs too, but that was the days of Webb, Gitchell, and Coyote, and I loved it. Once again, a place of safety, a place of belonging, and that was good. And then we went and bought a farm. It was too far away. I couldn't do choir practice once a week. So I started showing up at the little bitty East Mountain group, which was at that point about half a dozen people. And we had a good time. We were very huggy. And then about 20 years of that and COVID, and found myself terribly alone. Not lonely, not really, but very alone. So when I decided to retire and come up here, about the second thing I did was show up at church that summer. Not very many people. That was 2022. Not very many people here on a given Sunday, but I enjoyed it. I got to know people, and people kept filtering back as we got to the end of summer and went into fall, and you filtered back too, and that was great. Eventually joined the choir. That was wonderful. And this is home to me now. And I want to say a lot of you I don't know terribly well. There are people here I should know better than I do, but I love you all. I know who I am, I know who you are, and I love you. I also know what I am. I'm terribly lucky. I mean, I'm very poor, but just in money. My meager pledge is about all I can afford at any given time, except that somehow when it's time to put the check in the basket, I managed to up it $5. So I am lucky there too. And I do, as I said, hope to be here for a very long time and finally get to know everybody as well as I'd like. Thank you.
And now I'm going to follow that with the mundanity of announcements. Just a few things before we take off. First, part 2 of our climate change forum that had to be rescheduled is happening today, right after the service, so join us back here in the sanctuary for that. We'll be having a grounds cleanup day coming up next Saturday, the 13th, starting about 9 a.m. Barbara Mann, who you just heard speak, can tell you more about what is happening there. The following Saturday at 7 p.m., we're having an all-ages bowling night over at Cities of Gold. Hopefully my shoulder is better by then and I can come out and bowl with you all. Sunday the 28th, we will have a special forum just to go over the budget for the coming fiscal year to give us some time to really get into the meat of it, and we don't have to gloss over it then at the annual meeting. If you have your questions, we'll have that out to you ahead of time so you can take a look over it, and we'll be happy to explain things. I'm making promises for Jennifer Young right now, and she's looking at me, so we will probably have it together for you by the 28th. We'll.
The next one out.
Oh, no?
Yeah.
Oh.
We're focusing on the mural flower communion Sunday meeting. So
Forget you ever saw anything about a coffee house coming up. I'm sad now.
I know. We'll do it later.
And finally, our annual meeting will take place on Sunday, May 5th, immediately after the service. This will be your chance to have your voice heard and vote for the budget for the coming year and our slate of officers as well. So do join us for that. And now would you all please rise once again in body or spirit and join in our closing hymn number 121. Friends, may life bless us and keep us. May the light of life shine upon us and out from within us and be gracious to us and bring us peace. For this is the day. This is the one wild and precious life we have been given. So let us all find a way to rejoice and be glad in it. Go in peace.